This is the capital city of our guest today, who's going to be zooming in with us in a few minutes and who I'm going to introduce you to. And there it is when the Americans bombed it, going after ISIS, our bombs, to fight the terrorists in Syria, to take the battle somewhere. It's violence, it's real. Before we bring her onto the screen, that's her as a little girl, Suad. So she's gonna tell us her story. Can you just maybe say something about what happened when you left? Like why'd you leave Syria?
So the Syrian war was not actually my first war, but in the Syrian war, we heard that it was not ISIS yet. It was some wing of Al-Qaeda, and it was coming close to our village. And it was like a few villages away, so everyone knew about that, and like people started leaving the village, of course. Luckily, we were very close to Iraq, and we have relatives there, so we left to Iraq. I think it was not a very hard journey, like leaving Syria, but then again in Iraq in 2014, we were in Mosul in June.
But wait, we'll come back to that actually. We'll come back.
So how old were you when you left Syria?
I think I was like between 11 and 12, and like this is something that a lot of people don't expect, because you would imagine that such a major event in your life would be something that you would remember, and you would remember the exact date of. But something that even I, like being a psychology student myself, even I can't understand. I actually can't remember like the exact age or the exact time or even the weather when we left. I think it was like between 11 and 12. I was in the 6th grade.
Did you bring anything meaningful with you when you left?
Yeah, it was my note. I had a note that all of my friends wrote letters or like things on it. It was the only thing that I took with me in this Syrian war and also in the Mosul war. This is why I brought up the Mosul war.
Your family left their home, and you basically left knowing, okay, you're probably never coming back. And you had, what, like a suitcase of things like for you?
When we left Syria, we did not know that it's going to last that long. We were going to Iraq for like 5 days to a week. So we only had almost our clothes and like some extra clothes that you might need when you sleep, for example, like when you go out. We thought that things would end. But obviously, I've been here for like the last 11 years, so nothing ended. But I took my notebook. I also want to take other things like some of my school books. But my mom told me that you can just come and get them like later, and you'll always find them here. So I only had my notebook with me.
Okay.
So you left and never came back. So then you only brought one thing with you. So what happened when you guys had to eventually stay longer and you needed, the things that you left behind? Like, how was it to start a new life from there?
I feel like one of the things about starting a new life and about being a refugee is that it takes longer than you think to realize that you're not going back. For me personally, that took about 7 to 8 years. Because I'm a child, I don't know how it was for my parents, but I know that took me a very long time. We left to my grandparents' house, so like clothes and other things were covered. But then we left our grandparents' house and we to another city. We left to another city to the Hook in in Kurdistan, and there we started like a whole new life from scratch, literally.
So wait, let me be clear here. So this is this thing about being a refugee. So let me just say something to my class, okay? Look, what you have to do is you have to imagine that you are home in your parents' house and you leave. You gotta go. You gotta pack quickly. And you don't know if you're coming back. You may come back, you may not come back, but you go and you're gone. And you don't know where you're going, right? And life is precarious, and there's war going on, right? I mean, the war is happening, Suad, the war is happening all around you, right? I mean, the war in Syria was taking off. I mean, Syria right now, there are 5.5 million Syrian refugees living outside of the borders of the state of Syria, the nation of Syria. 5.5 million people. And so you and your family, you're just a very tiny, tiny number of people represented in that.
At that age, did you understand what was going on, or do you remember how you felt knowing that you left and you might never go back?
I think that in Syria, kind of everyone understood politics, even like young people, because it was kind of a police state. So like you would be very young when your parents first educate you about how the police system is working and how to be careful enough not to be caught, or like not to be the reason your parents end up in prison. So I feel like a lot of people, like even young people, did realize what was going on, like even children. But like the only thing that was hard for me it was hard for me to process in my mind was leaving and never coming back. But the war itself, I feel like it was something that we saw a lot of on the TV, that we just thought that it's going to be our reality maybe for a year or two, and then it's going to end. Judging what we saw in like other Arab countries, but it did not end so.
But you must have been so scared, though. What did you do with your fear?
The leaving, when we left from Syria to Iraq in the beginning, I would not describe it as fear, because again, like I thought that I'm leaving for only 5. I don't know if my parents thought that too, or if it's the story they told me. But I thought that we're leaving for 5 days to a week. But then after that, I think it was like the waiting more than the fear. Like the feeling of waiting for something that might never happen, that took over me. I really can't remember how I handled it, but I know that it was not really the best time of my life.
So you went to like camps after you had to like leave Syria?
After leaving Syria, we went to some relatives my grandparents actually in Iraq. But then, so we left, but my father stayed in Syria because like he wanted to keep the house safe. But then even my father had to leave when the terrorism group eventually got there to the village. So when my father came to Kurdistan, which is like a region in Iraq, we came to Kurdistan too, and my father decided that we're not going to stay in camps. So we stayed in a small village in like northern Iraq, northern Kurdistan. It's near Turkey. The house we stayed in, I would say like a tent would have been better. But I think that my father maybe wants us like not feel like we're in a camp or like in a tent.
What could you say something about that house? I know we have a photo of you, I think in that house, right? The one place?
Here's the thing. It was like a big house, a very big house with like few rooms. But like most of the rooms were not you could not live in. They were wet, and in the winter, like the whole room would get really wet, and few of the rooms were like already occupied by, I don't know, some like old furniture and things that we did not touch. But like the room, the place we lived was only one room. We were a family of 5. We stayed in that room for like 2 years. The good thing is like we had, our front yard was kind of big, so that was like the only window. We stayed in that room for like 2 years, and I can't really remember how big that is, but I know that my current dorms room is almost as I think it's almost as big as that one.
How old are you in that photo where you're drinking out of the water bottle?
This picture was actually taken in Aleppo.
Oh, in Aleppo. Okay. Yeah.
Family vacation.
Yeah.
And I'm drinking something we call shanina. In Kurdish, we call it avado. It's like yogurt mixed with water, and it's one of the tastiest thing I've ever tasted. And I'm eating shawarma. It's also a Levant dish. I think I was 7, maybe 6 or 7. And this picture is like one of my happiest memories.
Yeah. How so? What do you feel like? What do you feel when you feel happy? So what do you connect to the happiness?
The park was very big and green, and I feel like big and green and everything. So I personally connect to happiness. But also the feeling of like being comfortable and knowing that you're safe. Because like the greenish, mountainish happiness can happen. But the feeling of being safe and knowing that like you are staying here, like you have roots where you are, is something that like 5 million people lost.
I think that what you just said about feeling safe, like you go back in your memory, this is a space in your memory that you hold where you felt safe. In the big green space, you were 7 years old, you're just loved by your family. There's no war, it's just you being you. This is your first snowfall. Where was that?
My first snowfall was after we left Mosul, and we lived in the house I was talking about. So at that year, I don't know if you can see the wall behind me, but it was like a bit high. So I would go there, and I would like look at students when they were going to school and when they were coming back, and I felt very sad and disappointed. And I also feel like I have no goal in life because I could not go to school at that time. And I was like a very good student when I was in Syria. So it was like a very sad year. But then this was my very first snowfall. It was the very first time that I see snowfall. So I think that you can see how happy I was with the snow. This is why I really cherish and love this picture, because it brought something to me that I had lost for a long time at the time.
Where did you learn English?
So when we left from Syria to Mosul, to like my grandparents' house, they had like a basement, and we would always play there because like it was cold in the summer and then hot in the winter. So it was very big space. So we really loved it. We used to play in the basement, and it also had a TV. There was a bit of racism going on in Mosul at the time, especially against refugees. So my grandparents wanted me to like stay inside as much as I can, just to problems. So I stayed in the basement, and like I kept watching TV, and my favorite show was NCIS. I don't know if any of you watched it, but I learned English through NCIS, and it's still my favorite show.
Wait, so you learned English watching television? Yeah, American television, NCIS.
Yeah.
Yeah. You must be a savant for languages. Hey, I'm going to put this other photo up, the last one. So this is you with your brother. You said your brother had joined this is you holding the gun. This is your brother's gun. He joined the army, right?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
This is my cousin. He joined the army in Kurdistan, fighting against ISIS. And if you can see, also the wall behind me, there was the room that we stayed in. And I don't know if you can also see that, but it's really wet, and you can tell how it is by the walls. It's something I talked about in the facilitating class with Laurie, that children who grew up in war areas or places where there are constant wars and conflict, it's just very hard to make them understand, to make us understand that war and guns are bad things, because this is something that this is the one thing that they grew up learning. I feel like holding the gun in that picture, I thought that I am doing something, I am achieving something. Of course, that changed now that I grew older, and now that I just try to change and try to understand the world, and why is war happening. But it's something that I say that you cannot fully blame a child who grew up in a war area for liking war, for being, it's you cannot blame, for example, you cannot fully blame a child of alcoholic parents, be alcoholic someday in the future. You can't fully blame them. You know that there was a reason, and this is why I'm studying psychology. I believe that a lot of terrorism groups are like cults. So instead of killing the people who joined them, maybe we can deprogram them, and try to make them better people. If they were children of war, a lot of them did not have any other choices. A lot of them joined as children. I've heard a lot of people who joined when they were as young as 13 or 14. So you can't just blame a child for being a warrior, because this is how they grew up. Instead, we can try to do some therapy, some deprogramming. We need more of that in post-conflict areas.
And I think when I started class today and talking about Gaza, a lot of our students, people in this room, are not thinking about that. They don't really know. They don't understand. It's in a faraway land. It's just bombs going off and people killing each other. But it's not people killing each other. It's people killing and other people dying. And some of us are connected to that violence in very painful and difficult ways. And anybody who's connected to it wants that violence to stop. Yeah, it's in that kind of way. Do you have another question? One of you?
Well, I was just gonna ask. So, obviously, moving around and stuff like that, it must have not felt like home even after 8 years of living in another country. So, at what point did you feel like? Was there any point in your life that you felt like, okay, I've completely recovered from the effects, or I'm able to at least move on from this and not feel like I have to constantly move around, or, I have a permanent space to call home?
Even when I was in Syria, even though it felt very safe and stable, but it was still very hard for me to call it home, because the majority in Syria are from the Arab nationality, and I am from the Kurd nationality, and it was the government's job to make us feel very uncomfortable being there. So even like I am Kurdish, but my first language was Arabic, because like the education system is in Arabic, everything is in Arabic, and it's like a language you need to learn. So I would not say that even Syria felt like home to me personally, at least. And then coming here, it also did not feel like home. Like home, going to Mosul did not feel like home. I feel like there was a point in my life, and I think it was like 4 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago, when I decided that maybe it's not a good idea to like try to make any place feel like home. Instead, maybe to bloom wherever you're planted, or like however the saying goes. So I'm just like trying to, wherever I am, to benefit the people that I am living with, to try to give something for the community, even if it's not my own community, even if they don't recognize me, even if they want me out of the country, but giving something to the community, and like giving something to the people around you. I feel like that was the point when I decided that maybe I don't even need a home. This is enough for me. This feels safe enough.
So you were in Mosul when ISIS was in Mosul, okay? So the class watched, the students in the class watched the video of Bassem when Bassem was here a few years ago. And how was that for you? I mean, that was, what do you remember? Like, what did you experience? Because you then watched the destruction of old city Mosul, right? Getting rid of ISIS. So how was that? This is like so this goes back to your second war that you experienced, right?
My mom is from Mosul, so my grandparents also live in Mosul. So when everything first started, I clearly remember that it started at around 2:30 a.m. And if you have lived in Mosul at that time, it was, I would not say normal, but it was something that would happen. Just to hear random explosions and like people shooting, and actually it also happened in 2013. I remember that I was also in Mosul on the 6th of June in 2013, and there was also like a lot of explosions and a lot of shootings. So when it happened again in the following year, we also thought that it's going to stop after a few hours, but then it did not stop. I think we left on like the I think it was like the third day, because I remember staying in the basement for a while. We stayed in the basement for a while, and then when ISIS completely took over the area, because you can't leave when there's like a street fight. You have to wait until one of the armies or wherever it is like takes the area completely, so you can leave the house. So wait,
I just want to paint this. I just want to hold this for a second. What you said is, so you're hiding in the basement, you hear gunfire and bombs going off outside the house. You're locked inside. You can't go out when this is happening because obviously it's dangerous. First off, how old were you at that point?
I was very sad because this is very funny. I was very sad because I also I had an MP4 at that time, and I also broke my MP4 at that time, and I was like, okay, now there's a battle outside, and I can't even listen to music. So this sounds very funny, but like this was the saddest thing that happened to me at the time.
Suad, what happens in war is that it's the mundane things about war that stand out, because you're living your life every day. The fighting is happening all around, but you, the citizens, the people, are living your life day in and day out. And you're saying, I'm this young woman who's trying to listen. I'm just trying to listen to my music, and people are killing each other outside of my house.
I feel like listening to something at a time was a way to avoid it. But my MP4 did not work. I think I was writing. I think I still have the notebook that I was writing on in my house, and writing on the notebook. Whenever I heard an explosion or something very loud, I would write it. So I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I was writing everything that was happening outside, maybe just to get an image of what's happening and thinking about it, or I don't know what was going on in my mind, but I think that that was my coping mechanism to just instead of freaking out when I hear a bomb or something, I would just write it down in my notebook and count them.
What do you remember what you wrote down? Just that you heard it, or did you say some things about what you were feeling?
I did not say things about what I was feeling, but I wrote down whenever something was happening, and then because it was our family, and then my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts. So I was also writing what everyone else was doing at the moment. I remember writing that my aunt was praying, my uncle, my two little sisters were fighting. I just remember writing details about what people are actually doing, because if something would have happened to us, I know that I did not think of that at the time, but I feel like that was the reason if something would have happened to us, we would be numbers. But if I wrote our lives and the things we are doing, we would be lives, people doing things.
If you wrote it down, you would, and you'd be remembered, right? Somebody, it would, right? Was that part of it in a way? You'd be remembered. I don't know. I guess maybe that's
at least remembered by the notebook.
Yeah.
But it felt like humanizing us again instead of numbering us.
Yeah.
Does this make any sense?
No. It makes sense. Humanizing you. Yeah. Yeah. You have to do something to feel human, right? To feel. Yeah. I think about that right now. I think about all that's happening. And I think about, it's not just people in Gaza. I think about the Israeli soldiers that they can't just say, no, I'm not going in there. And they're right now in the middle of this. And many of them are saying, what the hell am I doing here? Why is this happening? They didn't call it. They didn't ask for it, and the people in Gaza aren't asking for it. And you didn't ask for it. You didn't ask for any of it.
Going back to the pictures of you as a little girl, obviously I'm looking at one right now. Obviously you're very young, very innocent, very smiley, very bubbly. Do you think you're similar to that little girl, or what you experienced throughout your years of war and violence? Is that little girl still alive today, or have you transformed into a whole new person?
I feel like I stopped being that girl exactly when it hit me that I'm a refugee now. But then in the latest years, and it was very sad years, the years when I stopped being that girl. But then in the latest year, I have been trying to do things, to do things for the children of war, for the other refugees here in Kurdistan, or for other people in general. And I feel like I am that little girl again. I feel very happy. I feel like I am doing something. And I feel like even though war is happening, and even with everything happening, people can still be good and people are still good. I feel like you get the sense of of happiness when you help people and you get the sense of childhood and innocence again.
What is one thing that you think we should know? Like, can you just put us in your shoes that we should know something about, like, anything that you would want us to know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Like a lasting thing. Like when we remember, when people watching, people who are here in the room, when they think back to you, what do you want them to remember or think about?
Going back to what I said before, I want them to remember me as the person who's trying to imagine as many lives as possible, and I want them to, like, if they would take something from all this conversation, is to imagine how the refugees in different places all around the world are feeling. There are things that people can't even imagine. For example, discrimination against refugee children in school. We usually, and this happened to me personally, we usually don't get as many marks as the other students, even if we have the same answers, which is very disappointing. It can be very disappointing. There are details that people can't even imagine, like think of. The hate comments, for example, we read like from very random people who don't even know us. Just because you are something. So, like, when you say something to someone, just try to put yourself in their shoes and try to imagine that it was you who was going through all of this. What would you want people to do? What would you want? How would you want people to treat you? How would you want people to talk to you?
What was different about your family in particular that allowed you guys to leave to compare to that of the people who actually stayed? Did you guys have like any other advantages, disadvantages, or if you don't know about your own family, maybe like other refugees?
I had relatives outside, and I think that it was like kind of also my father's decision that we are going to leave today, because if I'm remembering that correctly, like we left today and the attack happened the day after it, so like tomorrow. So it was that. But also I know that a lot of people cannot leave, and this is also another thing that I want you guys to know about refugees. A lot of us carry the weight of the people who could not leave, the people who died trying to leave, the people who lost their lives in the sea. Thinking about that, it's something I personally think about that very often, and I feel like I carry all of that, and I feel like this is going to be very silly to say, but I sometimes feel guilty because I survived, because I have a life that is better than a lot of them, because I did not stay in the camp, because I did not die in the sea. It's just a lot of heavy weight.
How was it like seeing your family restart from the bottom up?
For example, for my little sisters, they don't remember much about our life in Syria, but I know that for both of my parents, it was very hard. I always think of like how great they were, that they did not even that they tried their best to make us not see how hard it was for them. A lot of things changed because like starting from nothing in a day is not the easiest thing that you can think of. We had a house, we had a big family, we had a lot of trees. Like even seeing my father now planting trees in our new home, we moved into a new home a few years ago. So even seeing my father planting trees and starting from the scratch, well, in our old house in Syria, we had a lot of trees that gave us a lot of fruits, but even seeing that small detail, my father planting new trees, is also seeing him starting from the scratch. And like, you can just take that and put it on the scale of like life.